Good morning. Welcome. Thanks for tuning in to Kilat Shari Torah's daily review of Maimonides' 613 mitzvahs, the Sefer HaMitzvot, for Tuesday, December 7th, Pearl Harbor Day. Our next several mitzvahs, are going to talk about the idea of an Eved Ivri, a Hebrew bondman, a Hebrew slave. Let's call it slave. The word Eved in Hebrew works for a servant, an indentured servant, a bondman, and also a slave. So it's a one word that does multiple duties, and I think that's why we get some of the feelings and emotions, some of our wires crossed when we're talking about slavery in the Torah. Fun fact that God calls Moses his Eved, Avdi, his faithful servant. He's not talking about slavery or indentured servitude. He's talking about a very deep and profound connection. So with that in mind, let's talk about a couple of mitzvahs for today. We're forbidden to employ a Hebrew bondman. In other words, an Eved Ivri usually is someone who either by the court or by his own financial situation has been put in a position where he needs to work off a debt or an obligation. An indentured servant. I think that's the probably best word to use. Eved Ivri means a Hebrew slave, if you translate it that way. But the context means we're talking about a Hebrew bondman again, who indentures himself for a certain period of time, and it always expires at the end of the Shemitah year, the sabbatical year. So never more than 6 years is someone in this situation. When we don't do it nowadays, but in these times. When we used to employ Hebrew bondmen, we're forbidden from making them do menial tasks. Avodas Eved is the way that the expanded halacha talks about it. You don't treat him like a slave, the guy who does degrading kind of work, carry your things to the bathhouse, those kind of things. So you're not supposed to. We're forbidden from imposing a task, any kind of a degrading, dehumanizing task on a Hebrew bondman. Laid down. This is in the mitzvah it's actually elaborated in Sifra, in one of the halachic midrashim. So we're supposed to preserve the respect of the bondman, and in doing that, the master will no doubt be thankful to God, who has commanded us about all these things, all these kinds of human virtues, and so on. Similarly, following prohibition, we're forbidden to sell a Hebrew bondman by public auction. You're not allowed to put a Jewish servant, Jewish indentured servant, an Eved Ivri, up on the sale block, as might be permissible in other situations with other bondmen. Okay, so again, we do have the concept of slavery, people as chattel. Of course, we're not going to be doing that in our times. The way I imagine it is we'll have the halachas will be applicable, but they won't apply to anybody because no one will need to be in such a position. Next mitzvah, we're forbidden to employ an Eved Ivri, a Hebrew bondman, on unnecessary work. You can't just make him do things just to get your dollar out of him. Warm me up this drink, do things that aren't necessary, just to keep him to work. We're not allowed to allow the maltreatment of a Hebrew bondman. So if someone in your household or on in your company, in your organization is mistreating an Eved Ivri, you have to put a stop to that immediately. We're forbidden to sell a Hebrew bondmaid, a Shifcha Kanan, a Ama Ivriya, a woman who's in the same situation. She's not allowed to be sold. And we're also not allowed to afflict one's espoused Hebrew bondmaid. You can imagine how important this is. If she becomes engaged, we're not allowed to infringe on her marital rights. Her food, her clothing, conjugal rights, and so on are not allowed to be diminished in any way for the time of her servitude. And again, to emphasize that the time of servitude we're talking about is a short period of time, while the debt or whatever obligation it is worked off, and it certainly is not a continuous thing, an ongoing thing throughout the person's life. Okay, interesting things to think about and talk about, gives us some interesting insights, and we have a little bit more to talk about. So we'll continue. Please join us again tomorrow. Meantime, have a good day.